Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of you and peace out to the rest of you. Black heart sign and black in again. Man, look. I'm talking to you, you anti-passport crew niggas. And mostly the Supasly. The Supasly, from what I understand, went on an interview and I didn't get to see it because apparently that was blocked in my country. That link was blocked and I couldn't see it when I clicked on it. But he said something about the ages of consent in another video that I could see. He pointed to different countries that people like to travel to, black and white men alike. And he pointed to these ages of consent. Look, he decided to pretty much go along and say that black men who like to travel, especially to deal with a different type of woman, are predators. Coming from a Muslim who believes in marriage and not fornication, I'm telling you that this nigga's out of line. And here's why I'm saying it. As much as I hate to go in on black men, I gotta say this. The black community is in the quandary that it's in because of the mating standards of black American women. End of story. In the UK, it's the same thing because of the mating standards of black British women. I don't know about black Australia. You'd have to ask them and they could tell you. But I know that in the English-speaking West, America, Canada, and the UK, and I know that even in other countries, white and black communities alike, when they're Western nations, are suffering because of dysgenics. I understand this. We all know this. This is why black men in America will get passports and they will go to the DR and they will go to Brazil and they will go to Colombia. And they will go to Southeast Asia. And there are those who will even go to Africa, although that's not talked about as widely. There are those who will go. And they will tell you, others will go to Eastern Europe, but one of the things they will tell you consistently is we're not dealing with Western women. And the ages of consent around the world, West and East, are pretty low, if you really want to know the truth. So that being said, it's really dishonest and low down to sit up here and pull up the ages of consent in countries and to say that this is evidence that black American men with passports who go to these countries are going to take advantage of lower ages of consent. I know people who get passports and go to Brazil and the Dominican Republic. I know those who are looking simply to screw, fornicate. I don't recommend that. I know those who are looking for girlfriends. I don't recommend that, but I just understand it. I know those who are looking for wives. What I know about every last one of them is that they're not going there looking for these underage women like what you say they are. They're not going there trying to find some high school girl to dig her out. That's not what they're doing. I know that this is not what's happening, and the reason that I know that this isn't what's going on is because I know these dudes, and they're not into women that are that young. The reason that they're leaving the United States is because they're sick of immaturity. Why would they leave and go after other immature women in other countries? What they're looking for is to actually be treated equally to other men. And in black America and in black Britain, I'm pretty sure, and in black Canada, for whatever that's worth, good men who are thinking men, and I mean nice guys. I'm talking guys that are just square dealing. They're just not street niggas, are not attractive to most of these women, even when the women aren't street bitches themselves. You got women that are square as hell, grew up a certain way. Their dads raised them a certain way. Their mothers raised them a certain way, to which nobody would ever object. Their brothers were raised right alongside them a certain way, and they don't want the men from the neighborhoods that were raised the same way. They want men from worse neighborhoods, because somewhere down the line, they got in their minds that a real black woman is supposed to want a bad black man. And if you are a man who thinks and deals squarely and honestly and plans ahead, you have to deal with black women who are attractive telling you that these things make you boring, not because you're boring, but because you're simply not drama. You have to deal with black women hyper judging you. It's not wrong that they got standards. You've got to deal with them pretty much interpreting everything you do and say in the worst possible way, in whichever way would make you the least attractive to them. So you have to deal with them interpreting everything about you so as to make you unattractive, even when they're complaining about not having a man. Why are they doing that? Because they don't want anybody. You got to deal with the fact that they simply don't want anyone until they see a sperm-preferred man, and they all want the same men and chase them down. And you dumb niggas like Supasly and those who are backing him up and co-signing him are sitting up here and leveling charges of predation and sexual deviance on black men because they don't want to tolerate the bullshit of the black American woman. I'm saying this as a man who loves African American women because I love black women of all nationalities in general. But I'm saying this as the son of an African American woman. I still have to say, I have to tell the truth. They're jacked up. The community's jacked up, but they're jacked up more than the men are. And see, let me pull your coat to something, Supasly and followers. We are a community that has some sexual predators in it like other communities. We are not a community of sexual predation. We are a community of sexual dysfunction. It's mostly the women. We're not a community of sexual dysfunction on the part of most of the men. We are a community in which these things may exist as very rare phenomena, but we're not a community of these phenomena. See, when I was telling my wife about how in the Western world there were men that were not willing to marry, and this explained why one of her very successful cousins was not willing to marry, and he's in his 40s, and they come from a conservative Muslim background. I explained to her, well, this is the mindset of many men, and it sounds like your cousin living in the West, living in the U.S., who is now very successful and refusing to marry. It sounds like this is the reason why. And I don't fault him because in the West, look what's out there. Look what's available in the West, and you'll see it. And she said, well, it doesn't have to be that way. She was right, it shouldn't. But I had to tell her, well, you got to realize, too, that you got to understand that at the end of the day, even if your community is not quite that jacked up, there's still another issue, and that is that the marriage and divorce laws in the United States don't favor men. He can do all this work. He's supposed to marry someone and take care of her and all of that, but then when she gets tired and gets bored of him, and she didn't work all these years because he took care of her, that actually makes it easier for her to take half of everything he owns and collect alimony and drain him. So now he's on the hook for alimony, still has to work, but he can't enjoy half of it. Why would he accept a deal like this? The other thing I had to tell her, when I told her about what a lot of her college classmates, white Western women and black Western women in her college were doing to these men, the games that were playing, which she knew about, they existed. She said, well, this happens in my community too. And I know it does, but I had to tell her the difference is that your community is a community in which the phenomena exist. My community is a community of this phenomena. You see, the black women from your country are, they are a set of women among whom some choose the worst guys. Black American women are women of the worst choice in black men because it is so widespread that this now typifies them. This is what's going on. It is shaped our DNA for the last generation, at least, maybe the last two. I had to tell her this is where the difference comes in. See, in your case, women may want a bad dude or a good dude, and the parents step in and say, you ain't marrying him, or whatever the case is. And they certainly ain't going to pick out somebody that they know is abusive in most cases. But then you've got these others You have to understand that in our community, the parents don't choose the husbands for the daughters. They don't choose the wives for the sons. And the daughters have free reign in terms of who they pick. And they're picking the men that deserve them the least, so to speak, even by the standards that the women say they have. So they're expressing one set of standards and in picking men with a completely different set of standards. And this is why it is that we're in this quandary we're in. And a lot of black men are simply saying, we're done with this. We're not going to tolerate it anymore. We're not going to sit up here and pay the bill, pay the cost for the woman to be the boss, and pay the pussy price for another man to get the pussy. And I let her know this. And what I'm saying to you now, Supasly, and you other ignorant ass niggas that follow him, is that the African American community is a community of bad choices, mostly women's bad choices in men, because men don't really get the choice. Now, the white community, that is different. I have told you all, I've told the manosphere, leave them white women's alone, leave the community alone. I've said this. I've advocated for repatriation for a long time, before I even knew there was a manosphere. Why? Because the black community is a community in which there are sexual predators, but we're not a community of sexual predators. They who go abroad to these countries are a community of sexual predators. White dudes going to Thailand, white dudes going to Cambodia, white dudes going to Laos, white dudes going to Vietnam. This, I don't even know if they're a community of it, but the thing is that they're so known for this. That's the problem. They're so known for going to these countries and then chasing after the ones that just crossed into the age of consent, that oftentimes in these nations, the people there will treat a white Westerner worse than they would treat a black Westerner, because black Westerners are not known for doing this. You see, when a black American goes to Cambodia, the police don't keep an eye on them to see if they go and chase after young girls, because most black men ain't into that stuff. This is something people don't realize. Now, when it comes down to white guys, Korea had to pass a law. You don't go and teach English in Korea as a Westerner until you show a police report that shows that you don't have a criminal record, and the ones they check for first, officially, they prioritize sex crimes involving children. Why? Because there were a bunch of white Canadians. There was a series of white Canadians and white Americans that were going over there and effing some little boys. Now, this is in South Korea. That's what happened. This wasn't because of black men. When you land in Cambodia and you're a white Westerner, they watch you for a little bit. They may check up on you every few days. They want to know where you're staying. They want to know where anyone is staying, and that's normal. But they may, if they can spare the manpower among the police, they'll send a cop over to where you're supposed to be staying and see if they can spot you. Maybe nothing big, but they do tend to understand that black men are not going there looking for underage women to screw and get pregnant and leave. That's something white men are doing. They tend to understand that if you get a black man and you're good to him, and then you're going to be treated like a girlfriend and maybe even wifed up. They tend to understand this. We will appreciate commitment more. We're not using them just as toys, the way that even when we stick and move, we don't do it the way the white dudes do. This is understood. You sat up here and accused black men with passports who travel to escape from unfortunately from the black matrix, of doing the same thing of which white men even know themselves to be guilty. And you just sat up here. If that's not white supremacy, nigga, I don't know what is. And the thing is, you got this idea from some lady. I don't know who this mystery lady is that told you that's why these dudes were doing that. Now, are there men that go for this? There are, but then you ain't gonna find no group of black men going for no stuff like this. You ain't gonna find no two brothers, let alone more than two, catching a flight down to the DR or to Brazil so they can dig out they in their 40s and they gonna try to dig out some 16-year-old girls. You ain't catching nothing like that. Why? Because you and I both know that one brother who's in his 40s, a brother in his 20s, would be ashamed to screw someone in their teens, especially in front of another brother. We know this. That's the real truth of the matter. I don't even feel embarrassment. I lost that feeling of embarrassment over 2 decades ago, to be honest with you. And even I simply would not want to do it because I still feel a sense of pride and arrogance and conceit. If I wasn't married and I wasn't Muslim and felt fine with fornication at the age of, in my early 40s like I am now, I still would not be willing to sit up. I wouldn't be willing to bed down a woman in her 20s. Why? She's stupid. I'm the one that's mature and she's not. Why should I give her the dingle and give her the orgasm? I mean, in order to be that young and come to me, she would have to have something to really make up. She'd have to really be wise and mature. But we know that women in their 20s are not that. You find more guys in their 20s that are wise and mature than you do women in their 20s that are wise and mature. Why? They don't have to be. Simple. They just ain't got to be. So that being said, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. You want to know why we don't just stay in the matrix and deal with the scraggle daggle and the bitch, the American or the Western bitch, white or black. You want to know why we don't stay and deal with them. And I want to know why you don't just fuck the shuck up, knowing what you know about these women. Why you don't just keep your damn mouth closed and let brothers go abroad. Because look, if enough of us with these passports start going abroad, that's better for you. At least it should be, because then it should make your job easier, right? If once these women know about this, it should make your job easier. It's because, I mean, hell, brothers are leaving. That's sending a message to these women. You better not you better not mess it up. So you would think that when you come along, they look at you and say, I better not mess this up either. You would think that. No, instead, you upset because why? What you're really upset about is that we're not going to pay the pussy price on your behalf anymore. That's really what bothers you. You want to brag about you don't have to trick. You ain't got to trick because somebody else paid the price for you and didn't get the pussy. So that way you get the pussy and not pay the price. When that stops and you know it's going to stop, then all of a sudden you got to start actually tricking in the U.S. And that's what bothers you. That's really what gets your goat. Whatever the price is, if it's cash, jewelry, game, or a combination thereof, whatever her pussy price is, you know you're now going to have to pay it because we ain't going to be there to do it no more. You know that when her car breaks down on the side of the road at night, she's going to have to call the nigga whose house she just left from screwing to come and fix that tire, because there ain't going to be no other platonic dude that ain't digging them guts out going to come out there and fix her tire. She understands that. She knows that because the guy that fixes her tire is the one she doesn't want to screw no way to begin with. But when those guys that will fix her tire and not ask for the pussy or not, they're no longer there. Now it's you. She's going to look at you and she's going to look at her problems that nobody's taking care of. And she's going to say, well, damn, if he ain't fixing this problem, why should I be with him? I got this, that, and that to where I got real life to worry about. That's what's going to happen. You walk around acting like orgasms are free for everybody because they free for you. No, they ain't. They ain't been free. You just ain't been paying the price. That's all that is. You're allowed to go into the candy store and steal all the candy. It's not even stealing. You're allowed to go through because they scared to ask you to pay at the counter. Somebody else goes and buys the candy and has to pay marked up prices to recover the cost that they lost because they didn't recover it from you. That's all it is. And nothing more than that. Other thing I'm going to tell you too is this. I myself got a passport so I could look for a job. And I went to one of the most sexually conservative parts of the world, even of the Muslim world. And there are a bunch of others like me. Bunch of others who got passports, not even to find a girlfriend or a wife, but to find a job, dumb nigga. And that's how I learned about this. And what I learned is that a lot of brothers out there they get these passports so that they have options in work and women, not just so that they can go and dig out some underage. Because honestly, bro, really and truly, if you want to dig out somebody underage, you go somewhere where it's affordable for you to get there, and you go somewhere where it's legal and it's easy to not get in trouble or to extricate yourself from whatever consequences that might be. That's where you would go if you're going to do it. You go somewhere, you go to a place where if you are in the prison, you're going to be in a nice one. And that's real. It's better to go to Scandinavia and do this stuff if you're going to do it. This way, if you have to fight somebody and beat them up because you dug out their underage daughter or sister or cousin, you go to a nice prison. You don't go to third world nations to do stuff like that if you may get in trouble for it because you don't want to be in no third world prison. That's the real truth of the matter. That's really how that works. You either go where it's legal and you show the list of where they had these low ages of consent, but that's throughout the world, actually. That's in many places. Or you go somewhere where if you get in trouble for something else, because you got to understand, you go into these countries where that's legal, they'll get you on something else if they can't get you on that. They know you out there looking for some underage girls. They know that's what you're doing, but they can't prove it to the cops. They just get you on something else. So if you have to understand that if you are going to do stuff like this, that's not really the way to go about it. Now, if you white, that's different. I don't know what I don't have these discussions with them. All I know is that people of other nationalities and other races went to Thailand for vacation with their families. They weren't going to sex tours. And they came back and they were talking about the nastiness of the single white males that were there. That's what I know. They didn't say nothing about no African American brothers. They didn't say about no Africans over there. They didn't say nothing about nobody that wasn't white over there. They were talking about Western white Europeans and their diasporan descendants from the US and Canada and Australia that were going into places like Thailand and were sick because they were looking around for kids. That's what they were talking about. They ain't say nothing about no brothers. That's just something that some sister told you and you looked it up. You looked up the legal ages of consent and thought, okay, great, now I got something I can use against them. Failing to understand that a nigga like me was going to hear this and sit up here and tell you, no, dumb nigga, I know that's not the case because I got the passport for a job. And others like me got the passports for a job. And brothers I knew back in the U.S. before got their passports to find women, not these little underage broads that you were talking about. I knew that because, hey, look, I was in the U.S. with them. They didn't like them underage back then. It was underage ones that were chasing them, chasing most of us. So if you had simply watched your mouth, if you had simply thought about it and you didn't take some mystery lady's word for it, you could have saved yourself a lot of embarrassment. I hope that this message has been a benefit. Assalamu alaikum.